official. Dana Beach is stepping down as the executive director for the Coastal Conservation League, but he will stay on during the transition. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with him one-on-one. Dana, it is so good to see you.
Well, thank you, Quintin. It's always good to see you.
Likewise. Well, at least it won't be my last time talking to you.
There's no doubt about that.
And then when I saw the news that this is the headline in the Post and Courier, Dana Beach stepping down as director of Coastal Conservation League, I thought to myself, not Mr. Energetic.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm moving from the executive director position to more of a sort of strategic advisory and fundraising.
Okay.
Nobody wants to fundraise,
Right.
but I love doing it.
Okay.
So I'll continue doing that. But this is really a longer term process than maybe the news might have indicated,
Okay.
because we'll be looking for a replacement, and that will take some time. You know, these searches take, in our case, we've had open positions for a year,
Okay.
and I hope it doesn't take that long. But we're ready to be there if it does, and we're going to try to find the right person and somebody to come in and really work on the day-to-day activity of management and financial planning and that sort of stuff that I've been doing for almost 28 years.
You talk about 28 years. What is the difference between 28 years and right now when you think of the Coastal Conservation League and all that you've done for the Charleston and the Low Country?
Well, I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of it. I think I can say that without bragging, because I'm proud of the partnerships we've had with the other conservation groups, the Land Trust, Low Country Open Land Trust, the Nature Conservancy, our partners in the environmental law field, the South Carolina Environmental Law Project and the Southern Environmental Law Center. And I really feel like we've had one of the most effective collaborations that I'm aware of in the country. And the result of that has been a huge amount of land protected, 1.2 million acres on the coast, new zoning codes in place that are much more effective in curbing sprawl and maintaining the quality of life, better patterns of development, protecting water quality and habitat. So, you know, I feel good about it, and I'm excited about continuing in this arena, but in a slightly different mode. And
you told the Post and Courier, I believe this quote, "I'm probably not going to love every decision made by a new person, but I hope the board finds someone who's not just like me."
Well, that's, yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people who agree with the not just like me part. But you know, these founder-director transitions are always a big challenge. And our board has been very thoughtful and focused on how to do that without either one, having to do it in a sort of emergency mode, or two, do it in a way that the director kind of hangs around and interferes with the old director interferes with the new director. So there's that balance that you try to reach. And I think one of the reasons I think we'll reach that is we've got a tremendous staff. We've got now 35 people on the staff.
You had only had 2 at the time.
And had 2 when we started. And now, and they're super professionals. You know, they do a wonderful job. And the board is really the best board we've ever had.
And you also, well, you know, from what I read too, you were talking with the board about your transition for the past 2 years. And I'm thinking, what was that one thing that said, hey, it's just time for me to step down and let somebody else do it?
Well, part of it was the fact that we are in as good a shape as we've ever been in, and we're not in there's no urgent need to fix something right now. And you know, this is not a secret, but most nonprofits go through periods of urgency in trying to correct, you know, some important person leaves a position, or you've got some mistake that somebody makes, or you've failed to raise enough money for the yearly budget or whatever, and we're not in that position now. We've really are on a trajectory at the moment that's good. And of course we can't predict the future, and to the extent that we can't be sure that we won't have an economic downturn in the next year or two, or somebody in a leadership position might not leave. It just seemed like a good time.
Okay.
And then personally, I'll say that my son is graduating from college, so I'll have two of them, the two, off the payroll.
Yeah.
So that's a good time.
Yes, and you can go biking around the country now.
I'm going to do a little more of that, but I'm also really excited about the new role of doing more communications, because I mean, you of all people know the importance of, and you do a wonderful job of communicating these issues, and I just don't think we any of us do enough of that. I want to do more writing, and I want to figure out ways to get the message out of the importance of conservation, but also the success stories that we can tell in the low country. People should be prouder of that than I think they are. They're just not as familiar as they should be with what we've all been able to accomplish.
You talk about accomplishments. Obviously, your critics have good things to say about you, apparently. Mayor Joe Riley, former Mayor Joe Riley, that is, actually told the Post-Inquiry, quote, "The organization on the whole has been beneficial to the low country, but added in instance, their advocacy has been harmful and detrimental."
Well, you know, it's maybe detrimental, maybe in the eye of the beholder. We have definitely not supported the cruise ship
Right.
agenda here, and clearly 526 is an ever-present elephant in the living room.
Right.
But I think that although people like Mayor Riley may have a point or two of disagreement, I hope that the consensus is that the trajectory over time has been a positive one. I think we've gotten, for example, the green belt that is emerging around the urban areas, not only Charleston, but also Beaufort and Georgetown,
Oh, yeah.
and even Myrtle Beach, is really a wonderful thing, and it may be unique on the East Coast to have that amount of protected land. And so I don't think anybody really would disagree that was not a great accomplishment. And like I say, I'd never take credit for all of it, because we had such wonderful partners to work with on it. And Charleston County came through in a major way.
Right. Let me turn to John Tecklenburg. The mayor actually said this. Dana Beach has, quote, "done a remarkable job building an organization from scratch." And of course, he told the Post-Inquiry he doesn't always agree with you, especially on 526. But he thinks the organization now trends more towards development and urban issues than natural resource issues. So when did that happen?
Well, I think we've always wanted to work on both sides of the line. You know, we've wanted to, and we started out working on the rural land protection side, and that was in better zoning and on the rural areas on the Sea Islands.
Sure, yeah.
But the other is trying to promote better patterns of development in the urban areas so that people can walk and bike and take transit if they don't have a car or don't want to drive a car. And we should, if we have that choice, which we can increasingly have if we make the right investments, then we'll do good things for the environment. And also, you know, they're all sort of part and parcel of the same thing. The higher quality experience we have living in these urban areas, the less pressure there's going to be to push outward, you know, to live in the bucolic landscape, which is sort of a fiction for most people, because, you know, if you live 20 miles away, and it may be beautiful where you live for a while,
Right.
but you just got to sit in your car for hours a day.
An example, John's Island.
Good example.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good example also of the kind of planning that we feel like is critically important. John's Island needs a lot of more attention than it's getting on the infrastructure side, and it's not 526, but it's improving the intersections at Maybank and River, making Maybank more bike friendly, including building a grid of streets along that corridor so that not every trip has to hit Maybank. It's kind of it's hard to, in a nutshell, we talked about this at our board meeting yesterday, how do you explain that in an elevator speech? But cities aren't simple things, you know, they evolve over time, and the way they do in the spatial environment is really one of the most important things to determine how we as a society can operate in our communities.
Let me turn back to 526. I'm sure you heard this already, but State Senator Sandy Sin has sent a letter, I believe, to Governor McMaster, basically asking for the removal of Vince Graham. Apparently, she said this quote, "This past year, Mr. Graham single-handedly delayed the work of the SIP by repeatedly refusing to call meetings or by canceling meetings when he knew that Charleston had the votes to move our projects forward. He has succeeded in waiting until a member of the board rotated off and new members have rotated on. In short, he has substituted his opinion for that of the board by not doing the job he was appointed to do and conduct meetings. For this alone, I believe that his service on his board have been subpar." What sticks out to you with this particular letter that Sandy actually wrote to Governor McMaster?
Well, it's not accurate, for one thing. The chairman doesn't have sole responsibility for calling meetings. The board calls meetings, and to the extent I know, and I followed a little bit about how those meetings were set. You've got 7 members, and they are all over the state, and they all have jobs besides the day jobs compared to the volunteer work they do on the SIP. So as my impression, and I know this happened in a couple of instances, they tried to get the board together, and the board was able to meet at a certain time. It may have been later than Senator Sin wanted them to, but that's just the way volunteer boards work. And so I guess what I'm saying is that Chairman Graham really isn't the one who sets the meeting dates. He tries to negotiate a time that everybody can make it. He did have a couple of meetings where at least 1 or 2 members were not able to make it. And that's not ideal because, the board is set up in a way that you want full participation from everybody who's appointed. And now, under the new regime, which we think is a good idea, the infrastructure bank projects will be approved by the DOT. And the reason that's a good idea is that they will be consistent with the state's overall transportation plan, which was not the case since this inception of the SIP. Mm-hmm. So this is a reform and a discipline, I think, that really is very positive.
Mm. The public meets Charleston County. That's happening tonight. Obviously, they'll have a public forum to discuss the future of 526. If you were to stand in front of Charleston County, what would you say about this 526 extension plan if it were to go forth?
Well, I would say, first of all, that $750 million, the largest and most expensive transportation project in the history of the state, is a vastly too much money to spend on this one project when, as a number of people have said, West Ashley doesn't have a monopoly on traffic congestion. I-26 is carrying more than 100,000 cars a day, which is considerably more than Savannah Highway is. We've also done an analysis, which is a part of the environmental documentation, that there are better ways to deal with the congestion points on Savannah Highway than building a new interstate. There actually was an interesting article, a letter to the editor in today's paper, by Ed Pendarvis, who said, we don't need the other leg of it, we ought to just build one leg to West Ashley. And I'm not convinced that's a good solution, but I think that kind of analysis in a more dispassionate setting is really what we need to do. And ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is we have and will have forever a limited amount of funding available to deal with all of the needs we face in the state, in the region and the state. There are projects that are so important for us in the future. One is the bus rapid transit project, which half-cent sales tax, some of that is going to go to it, but it's not enough to finish it. And we need to have some funding from the state and from the federal government available. Another would be simply these intersection improvements that need to be made. The flyover at
Right.
Maine and Maybank, at Maine and 17 is another one that is funded by the half cent at the moment. So there are priorities for the region, for the county, that are much more important and far ahead of this interstate, regardless of whether you think what you think of it. Is it going to be negative, positive, or neutral? And if we could deploy the $400 million that's been tied up for now a decade, and if we don't decide to do that, it's going to be tied up for another decade, and we will all sit in the kind of congestion that could be alleviated with more thoughtful, targeted investment in transportation.
It's always good talking to you. It's
Well,
always.
thank you. It's good to talk to you, Quintin.
And I know it's like you said, it's not going to be the last time we talk, so thank you.
Not
for-
good. Yeah. No, thank you for coming back.
Oh, anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.